Imagine going to your doctor for help, and instead of being supported, you're taken advantage of. That's what happened in Norberg v. Wynrib, a Canadian case that raises several important questions about consent, power, and trust in healthcare. In this presentation, I'll go over what happened, how the court approached the issue, and why this case still matters. In this case, a patient was dependent on prescription drugs, and her doctor controlled access to those medications. Instead of helping her address the addiction that she had, he suggested a sexual relationship in exchange for continued access to those drugs. Because of that dependency, the situation wasn't equal. The doctor had significant control that directly affected the patient's ability to make independent decisions. So, from the beginning, this wasn't just a personal interaction, it was shaped by a clear imbalance of power. The central issue was whether the patient had actually given legally valid consent. The court found the physician liable for battery and for breaching his fiduciary duty, meaning he failed to act in the patient's best interests. More importantly, the court made it clear that this was not legally valid consent. In a medical relationship where one person depends on the other, that dependency matters. If a doctor exploits that vulnerability, then the patient is not in a position to choose freely. So even if a patient appears to agree, that agreement isn't considered valid if it results from being taken advantage of. This case is especially important from a patient perspective. It reinforces that consent in healthcare has to genuinely be voluntary and free from pressure. Patients often rely heavily on their doctors, and this decision makes it clear that the reliance cannot be exploited. For example, access to treatment or medication should never be used to influence a patient's decisions. At a basic level, patients have the right to make choices freely without feeling pressured or dependent on what a doctor might withhold. On a broader level, this case also affects how the healthcare system operates. It reinforces clear professional boundaries and highlights the responsibility doctors have to act in their patients' best interests. It also contributes to stronger oversight through regulatory bodies and professional standards. As a result, there is more emphasis on accountability and on protecting patients, especially those in vulnerable situations. That's important because trust is a core part of healthcare, and cases like this show what happens when that trust is broken. In the end, Norberg v. Wynrib shows that consent isn't always as simple as just saying yes or no. In healthcare, power imbalances can affect whether a decision is truly voluntary. This case makes it clear that the law recognizes that reality and is willing to step in when that power is abused. Ultimately, though, it is about protecting patients and making sure that healthcare is grounded in trust, respect, and ethical responsibility. Thank you for listening to my presentation.